Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Good evening, listeners, and a warm welcome to another Teachers Talk Radio edition. Tonight, we're going to talk more about AI, but in this evening's episode, we're going to talk about AI in the context of curriculum. So we're going to talk about how to move from silos to systems. And I am thrilled to welcome this evening two educators who are actively working on reshaping the future of teaching from the ground up. First, I would like to welcome Harun. Harun is a seasoned mathematics teacher and also founder of Flip with AI. And Harun, in just a moment, I'll let you introduce yourself. And also a warm welcome to Darren. Darren is a former English teacher and has decades of experience both as a teacher and a school leader, and he is now the co-founder of Compass Education, and he also brings tonight a bold vision for curriculum reform through his concept of Curriculum X. So Harun, warm welcome to you, and would you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Thank you for this opportunity, Clara. I'm happy to be here with you people. And I'm now seasoned because it's been 25 years that I've been teaching maths. Actually, I've been teaching maths for the first decade. And after I started flipping my classes, I started helping my students learn. Big shift in that sense, because I think our profession is wrongly named. We can't teach anything unless the students want to. So we just help them to learn. We just encourage them. We try to, bring a little bit self-confidence, and that's all our role. I worked in Turkey, Cyprus, in the Middle East, and I got my training at the age of 42, my QTS in London. It was a really like a phoenix moment for me. I learned a lot there, and now I'm back in Cyprus.
Fantastic. A warm welcome and lucky you. Cyprus is a beautiful place to be this time of year. So that sounds wonderful. Darren, a warm welcome. And for the purpose of full transparency, I know Darren well because we work together every day. But tonight we're not going to talk about what we do. We're going to talk about what you are doing with curriculum. But would you take a moment to introduce yourself to our listeners around the world?
Thanks, Clara. So hi, I'm Darren. I'm a teacher. I'm not really a tech person. I just fell into this like many of us have done. I was an English teacher, as Clara said. I was a head teacher. I've run a couple of schools. I've managed groups of schools all over the world. And the reason I got into AI and ChatGPT and all of the stuff that we're doing right now is that I was running a school in Tunisia at the time ChatGPT was released. And we were one of the first schools to kind of embrace it and really sort of go for it. And I posted a lot and shared my ideas, and then sort of one thing followed another. And so for the last couple of years, really, I've been, nearly 3 years now, actually, I've been focusing on sort of the intersection of AI and education, just really trying to support schools, both with the leadership and the governance, which is obviously where we come in, working together, just basically helping schools make sense of where we are right now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I do have some questions for both of you. But before we get started, I want to just take a moment to thank our sponsor of tonight's show, which is brought to you in partnership with John Catt, educational publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. And you can use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. All right, so let's get to the good stuff. My first question goes to both of you, but Harun, if you could start, tell us what is actually happening in the classrooms today in regards to AI and where curriculum sits today that prompted you to sort of step outside some of the more traditional roles and develop new models like the flipped learning with AI.
Yeah. We know what's happening in classes today, in classrooms, and we know what's not happening. I mean, I read Darren's post on Curriculum X this morning, and it really is inspiring in the sense that we need that meaning. We need to bring that meaning to classrooms, and we don't have that at the moment. But I'm going to ask this. I want to say, whose line is this? There is no major issue in curriculum. Who could say that? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I will throw that right to Darren, because Darren, you have worked on this concept of Curriculum X. I also had the pleasure of reading your article on Substack. It was very cool, and I thought maybe you could respond to Harun's question and also tell us a little bit about what you're thinking behind your concept. Yeah. Curriculum X.
I mean, first thing to say about Curriculum X is it was just a bit of a brainstorm I had a few days ago. Just came actually from nowhere. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about curriculum for a long time. I've managed curriculums all over the world, so I kind of have a reasonable understanding of how curriculums work. And it just suddenly occurred to me, and I don't know whether I'm right or wrong. I mean, I think so much of what we do is tentative right now because things are changing all the time. But it just got me thinking about, when a child goes to school, okay, and does stuff. And actually, I've learned a lot from my own children, particularly my 9-year-old son, who I do kind of mention quite often in my posts because I feel I genuinely learn quite a lot from him. But the notion of going and doing, and it doesn't mean that we don't do maths. It's just, is it called maths? It doesn't mean that we don't do English. It's just, is it called English? It doesn't mean that we don't do history and geography. It's about how we maybe reframe the structure. And this is not new. I mean, what I'm talking about is not new. I mean, we've had in the IB program, individuals and societies, we have these things already. So it's not like I'm environmental systems and all of this sort of thing. It's not like I'm reinventing the wheel at all. In fact, if anything, you read back through and you think, well, actually, it does borrow quite a lot from the IB. So it's less about like throwing everything out and starting again. And it's much more about meeting our students where they're at. And I think we need to be focusing much more on interdisciplinary and real world approach to even the way in which we name the stuff that we do. We even move away from the notion of a subject towards there are things that students need to do to prepare them for now. We're just entering the second quarter of the 21st century, and yet we're still getting kids to scratch on worksheets, and it's just a nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. And I see this in my own children. I see how disengaged, particularly my son is, with this process. And it just got me thinking. And literally the whole curriculum really came from about a 1-hour back and forth session with ChatGPT 03. And actually what fell out of it was what I thought was quite a neat and quite an elegant way of approaching it. So I think, Harun, in many respects, I don't disagree with you at all. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with much of what we do. I just think we're probably going about it the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean, no, my point was, for example, your son, he's very disengaged because, well, the curriculum is trying to probably prepare him to the exams coming up in year 6, at the end of year 6, if he is in an English school. And the same applies to GCSEs, IGCSEs, A-levels, right? In IB, there are exams at the end. I mean, we always have this assessment, and our curriculum always aligns with this, and we don't have time to go out of that curriculum, let alone have the initiative. I mean, that was my point. And in that sense, I totally agree with you. We have to break this. But I think the assessment part must really change. That's where we need the reform.
But it's going to. Look, it's going to. It has to.
Yeah, eventually.
Kids can do their coursework with ChatGPT now, and most of them are getting away with it. I mean, most of them are. So they're all just they're not rubbing their hands together. That would be unfair on kids, because actually most of the kids I talk to don't even like it very much, don't trust it. I mean, it's quite interesting when you actually start talking to students about AI. Many of them don't like or trust it. My daughter, 18 now, off to university next year. She doesn't use it. She doesn't particularly rate it. She actually said the other day, there's no space in my life for it, which I thought was quite a neat way of putting it. There's just no room in my life for AI. So why do I need it? So I think there is that. We maybe have this idea that AI is going to revolutionize the world and change everything. And most kids are like, I don't really want to use it. I think we have to be very intentional in how we talk about it in schools. That's critical, by the way. I know this sort of slightly jumps the gun on a later question about what do we do. First thing, we have to be intentional with how we talk about AI. If we're not, if we're vague, if we're non-committal, the kids pick up on that. So we really have to, and we can be very firm one way or the other. You know, I really distrust it, but we're going to explore it together because I need to understand it myself. I don't get it well enough to be able to sort of say one way or the other, but at the moment I don't like or trust it. Or we're like, this is what it's good for. This is what it's really bad for. This is how you can use it. This is how you really shouldn't use it. This is the process this is how your workflows change when you're using it. We have to be very intentional, because if we're not, the schools that I'm working with at the moment, basically what happens is the kids are like, no, I don't really know much and I don't really trust it and I don't really think it's very good and it's very mediocre. And so I think that's one of the first things that we need to do in schools, just to be much clearer about how we talk about AI.
Yeah. To raise awareness for sure, because the kids watch all the social media and other stuff.
Exactly.
And to some extent, they're right too. I mean, it is in some sense mediocre in the sense that, if you don't prompt it well, you don't get a proper output and so on. So all of these, they have to be explained about. So I totally agree. Yeah. We must raise awareness.
Hi, secondary school teachers. We're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculums. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
Did you know that every year, half of disadvantaged children who are top attainers at primary school don't go on to achieve top GCSE maths results? At Axiom Maths, we exist to change that. Our fully funded program helps schools nurture young mathematicians through weekly face-to-face maths circles, where pupils tackle challenging and exciting problems outside the national curriculum. With just under £3,000 annual funding, expert training and quality resources, we give schools everything they need to inspire the next generation of mathematical thinkers. Want to make a difference? Visit AxiomMaths.com today and join over 400 schools delivering maths circles across the UK.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
I think that's a really interesting point, because I think we actually see that in research that has been conducted as well, that the younger generation tend to be much more suspicious of what they hear and see on social media, and much more hesitant to use these technologies like large language models. Of course, there's some that will test it and try it, but when they do, they quickly find that they have very little interest in using it, and they're therefore not really learning how to use it. And I think that brings me back to one of the questions that I have for you, Harun, because Darren talks a little bit about not just intentionality, but also engagement, that students are checking out because they are doing sort of endless busy work that has no meaning to them.
Yeah.
So you work with flipped learning and AI. When you are exposing two students to this new method that you are using. So we're, I think, all familiar with flipped learning, but maybe you could start by telling a little bit about what that is, and then talk a little bit about what the concept of flipped learning with AI is. And then we can talk a little bit about how students are responding to that.
Right. Flipped learning came up with the idea that, we just teach students, we start a chapter teaching the basics, and we start solving some exercise sets from the book. And then we can't finish it, or if we finish it, we just pass to the second exercise set, which is a tad harder, right? Or within the first exercise set, harder questions. We just send students home saying that this is your homework. And then kids struggle. I mean, even if it's the same similar questions, they would struggle because, students everyone tends to forget what they learned after some time. This is proven by research. So they go home without any guidance, and they try to do the homework. There's a lot of struggle, a lot of stress. Parents are stressed. They go private tuitioning. They cheat, obviously, because this is graded, this homework piece. So this is the only thing they can control when it comes to grades. So they want to get the best out of it. So homework does more harm than good in the traditional sense. The good students do great because they know how to do the questions, so they consolidate their knowledge. But the bad students, they can't do it, so they struggle, they just check out. Now, flipped learning flips the homework and classwork. So they do the basic work at home, which they can handle with the help of videos or other materials. And the harder part and deeper understanding comes out in the class time under guidance of the teacher. So it's all planned and everything. So this is how this works, the full flip. And this idea really helps students too, because they start building their self-confidence. They started to see that, oh, I can do this actually. I learned this basic stuff, and now in the class, I get my guidance, I learn it, deeper and so on. And I have been doing this for more than a decade now. And I have seen this work well. One of my students, in the previous year, he was a C student, and at the end of the year, he was really sorry, really upset that he missed an A. That was the progress that he had. Not all of them progressed that significantly, but there was always a progress. They liked it because they built their self-confidence with it. So with AI, actually flipping is easier because you can plan, you can prepare, and you can actually brainstorm with AI to how to implement and how to assess, how to evaluate, how to follow up and follow through, because that's also another problem that we have in classrooms today. We just give the homework, any assessment, whatever, we just assign them grades, right? You got 80%, perfect, A, whatever. But then you got a C, you got 40%, you got 50%. And then the next day, we just solve the questions on the board, we just talk about the exam and move on. Why did you miss that? 60%. For those who got 80%, why did you miss that 20%? Right? We don't talk about those stuff. Follow up, follow through. Flipped learning gives that time to the teachers. So, and it makes things more meaningful, because you want to, when you teach your subject, you want your students to learn it and perform well, right? And if you don't see it, you check out yourself too as a teacher. And that's what we are seeing in classes in schools right now. When it comes to students' experience with AI in my classes, well, honestly, I have to admit, I didn't bring too much of AI into my classes yet, because I myself am not satisfied with it. I mean, I've seen the AI tutors, AI chatbots, and every single time an AI model says, we got a new update, we can do maths this much. And so I just ask it to solve a quadratic equation, and I'm just checking the answer. Initially, they were not able to solve. Now they're able to solve, but cannot explain it properly. And there are lots of other aspects of guiding a student at that sense, and it's really a relationship between you and the student. You just hear your student stutter a little bit while explaining his or her work, and you say, okay, there's something here, we have to push this, we have to make sure that he or she gets the idea, right? AI is not there to do it yet, maybe one day, but that was the reason I didn't bring AI to my classes. And I believe assessment and evaluation in every sense, and feedback, giving feedback, is my job, because I get to know my students through their work, through where they struggle, so that I can help. But if I just feed AI with all these tasks and have it assess for me and read the feedback as the students will read it, it doesn't make sense to me. So I generally keep AI on the backstage, planning, preparation, brainstorming, implementation, assessment, but for me, not for the students.
Fantastic. You bring up a lot of different things here, and some of the things that come to mind is the way that you're describing flipped learning, and your vision of flipped learning reminds me a little bit of how we maybe have been describing the role of the teacher as we go into the future of AI, so that the student does some work on their own at home, but come into the classroom and really have more one-to-one time and a more in a coaching environment with their teacher, rather than sitting sort of passively and listening to a lecture. And I also have to admit that the AI governance person in me is warm around the heart to hear that you're not bringing AI into the classroom because you are not satisfied with it yet. So you have a plan to do it, but you have certain standards in what you're bringing into the classroom, and unless those standards are met, you're not bringing it in. And I think that is a very impressive and a wise decision to make. So good for you on doing so.
I do have a plan. Actually, I designed an AI tutor, and you should know Brian Tenenbaum from LinkedIn. He has his platform, and we met one day. I explained my draft plan, and he said, well, I think it's a little bit difficult to do this now. We have to, employ 3 or 4 AIs working together, sending the inputs and outputs and everything. Let's wait for a while, he said. So, because, it's not about teaching, it's about guiding, it's about mentoring the kid and giving the encouragement, right? You can do this, building the confidence. That's what we do there during class time. So AI is not there yet. That's what we decided.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. Darren, I'm going to jump over to you because I know that you have thoughts on some of these things as well. And then I also have a question for you. But I thought before I ask you the question, do you have some feedback on some of these things that Haran just talked about in terms of his experiences and perspectives.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would agree with what you're both saying. The worst thing and I've seen this firsthand quite recently, actually, a teacher using AI in the class who didn't really know what they were doing. And it goes back to intentionality. You need to really understand what you're doing when you're using these tools. Because if you go in, you can be experimental, don't get me wrong, but you have to be intentional about being experimental. We're going to try this tool and see what happens. Let's just see what happens. I'm not sure myself. I saw some really good examples of that. Yeah. I saw a teacher give a fantastic lesson where he basically created a digital, an AI representation of René Descartes, the philosopher, and by using NotebookLM, and he trained NotebookLM on vast amounts of data. I mean, it felt like you were even talking to Descartes. And what he then did is he got the students to write questions to ask the AI. And he even said, I'm not sure what it's going to give us. Let's just see. Well, let's just see what happens. And the students questioned this AI, and it gave back some responses. And what was really interesting, the teacher was like, God, I hadn't really thought about that. So he was quite intentional about it being an exploratory, let's train up NotebookLM, Google NotebookLM, and then let's have the students asking it questions in class. And then let's just see what happens. I really liked that. But there was another lesson where a teacher had created a multiple choice. It was maths, by the way. He created a multiple choice worksheet using AI. It was one of these, I think he borrowed my idea of using the code to create like an interactive version, but he hadn't actually checked any of the answers. Halfway through the lesson, he's like, I'm not really sure that's right. Completely destroyed his credibility as a teacher, but also the students' perception of AI. Because of course, what they take out of that lesson is teacher doesn't know what he's doing. And I definitely don't trust AI if he's bringing tools and he doesn't even know the answer himself. He even said, I'm not really sure that's the right answer. It was just really bad. So I think that's why I think you're right, Haran. You have to be very, very confident and comfortable with using these tools first, which is why I always say first thing you do as a school, just let your staff play. Just let them play. It's like a playground. We've talked about this, Clara, creating these sandboxes where you can say, right, you got these 3 tools, completely data secure. You can do what you like with them. Just see what happens. And then see what comes out of that playfulness, because actually what you might find, like with my curriculum, you might find something really remarkable appearing, or you might just think, nah, you know what, as you say, Haran, right now, not going to use it because it's just not good enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that is indeed something that we have talked about. I wonder, Darren, just for the listeners that don't understand exactly what a sandbox is, if you could unpack that a little bit. I
mean, ultimately, a sandbox is kind of a safe space for experimentation. A sandbox might be you saying, okay, we've set up NotebookLM, Google NotebookLM, with some Google Workspace for Education accounts. You can upload data and documentation to this space because actually it's not leaving the school. So it's like creating a little narrow space within which you can just do whatever you want because you know that you can't break the model. You're not going to lose data secure. There's not GDPR leaks. So, but that actually takes some effort. It takes some understanding, mainly from the leadership team, to say, okay, we know we've stress tested, we've red teamed these, we've pushed these as hard as they can go. We can't break them. We feel fair. We've read the terms and conditions to death. We've gone through them with a fine-tooth comb. We feel confident that these 3 tools are safe. See how you get on. Give some initial training, and then just see how you get on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's essentially what Haran maybe was doing there in a sort of a micro version, testing yourself and kind of sandboxing at home. And the key there is not exposing the students until you know that you have something that has educational value and that is safe for them to use in the classroom. So I want to return to curriculum, but I think this is actually a good point for us to skip forward then to another question that I had for you. So I will come back to curriculum.
Hi, secondary school teachers. We're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculums. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
Did you know that every year, half of disadvantaged children who are top attainers at primary school don't go on to achieve top GCSE maths results? At Axiom Maths, we exist to change that. Our fully funded programme helps schools nurture young mathematicians through weekly, face-to-face maths circles, where pupils tackle challenging and exciting problems outside the national curriculum. With just under £3,000 annual funding, expert training and quality resources, we give schools everything they need to inspire the next generation of mathematical thinkers. Want to make a difference? Visit AxiomMaths.com today and join over 400 schools delivering math circles across the UK.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Welcome to Teachers Talk Radio News, read by John Gibbs. For Friday, the 18th of April, 2025. This week, two perennial struggles are taking place, both identified by the Times Educational Supplement. The first, as many teachers will recognise, is the struggle to keep arts significant in the curriculum. Reporter Sam Eyre describes how the significance of arts and the struggle to keep it in the curriculum is becoming more significant under pressure from English and maths. This, as many teachers will know, is that debate between the hard subjects and the soft subjects, which continues. Also in the Times Education magazine, Charlotte Cooper asks schools not to respond too quickly to moral panics, such as the ones that might be in response to the programme on television Adolescence, brilliant though it was. It pushes aside many other things that have to be accomplished in PSHE and demands again of schools that they should solve the problems of society. This time in The Guardian, a letter from Councillor Johnny Cranshaw, who describes the way in which multi-academy trusts are actually much more expensive and leech away millions in the salaries of executives and ancillary staff. His letter, right or wrong, continues the ongoing debate and re-evaluation in this country of the value and success of the multi-academy trust experiment. Also related to some of the perennial problems and questions that many people ask about schools was a thought-provoking article in The Guardian this week by Eva Wiseman. She asks, there certainly is a problem with attendance in schools at the moment. After the pandemic, it's really gone down significantly. Everyone agrees that this is the case. But should we be asking, what are schools for? Is this a symptom rather than a problem in itself? Is the problem something underlying, something that looks us in the face? Are these the schools, she asked, that Michael Gove built? Schools where the discourse is about delinquency, feckless parents, lazy students, and discipline. Should we be asking instead how we can make schools more receptive, more comfortable, more humane for students of all kinds? Again, right or wrong, these may be things that we should certainly be asking ourselves. Sky News picked up on the Andrew Tate phenomena. Misogyny. Young boys as young as 10 barking at female teachers, blocking doorways, and so forth. Is this part of the moral panic? Is it real? Or is something very significant happening in our society that's generating a toxic masculinity that we should all be aware of? In support of the suggestion that this is a very significant problem, more than 5,800 teachers were polled as part of a survey by the NASUWT union. And nearly 59% said they believed that the use of social media had contributed to a deterioration in pupil behaviour. Returning to the theme this week of perennial questions, ones that any teacher with a lengthy career will recognise, was the online site Teacherhead, which asked, does subject knowledge matter more than teaching techniques? Is it important that a teacher should be an expert in their field? Their knowledge impress the students, the depth and understanding of their particular field? Or is the art of teaching something that relates to relationships with students, techniques in the classroom, structure of lessons and planning? Can brilliant people be poor teachers? Can brilliant teachers not know much about their subject? Well, as for perennial questions, I'm sure that question will go on. And finally, a major story in the news this week, covered in The Independent and by the BBC, are free school breakfast clubs. They provide 30 minutes of morning childcare and a breakfast, and the trial is taking place in 750 schools until July. This was an election promise by the Labour Party and is being carried through by the government. Critics wonder whether it's being properly funded, with many schools suggesting that the costs will fall on them. It is generally agreed, however, that a good start and a breakfast and a period of time where students can begin their day before the pressures of school starts is probably a good thing. In the 1960s, we were urged to go to work on an egg. Not such a bad idea. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with John Gibbs.
But we've heard maybe the narrative change a little bit in the public about AI and how teachers are using it. But there are still very many teachers out there that have a real fear that AI will replace them. And I've heard both of you in different contexts argue that AI can reclaim teaching time, but both of you have a little bit a different way of thinking about that. And I wonder if maybe, Harun, if you would go first and talk a little bit about how AI can support teachers rather than sideline them in the context of flipped learning.
Right. First, I have to say AI cannot support teachers. Teachers will employ AI in the sense that, they want to use it or they don't want to use it. They reject it at all. And that's where the sideline kind of thing will happen. Some teachers will eventually be sidelined because they will probably refuse to use AI, or they will try it, but just because there was not enough guidance or information in their schools or in their networks, they will just dismiss it, and eventually they will be eliminated over time. But others, we will adopt. We will find ways, and we will find meaningful ways of employing AI in our profession. In terms of flipped learning, and as I said before, I think it's not there yet, but it will be very easy to create content when it comes to flipped learning. The first thing you have to do is to, generally speaking, create videos for basic content. And I think that's going to be much easier with the help of AI. There are lots of platforms, some of them really good at creating those videos. And I tried myself, actually. I'm not a native speaker of English, so I said, when I'm creating my trainings, maybe it's a good idea to create my own avatar and write the narrative, feed the narrative, and the avatar will take care of it. And it's going to be a nice, fluent English. but it didn't work. I tried it. I fed the platform with lots of videos, and the way I speak, I don't have a proper accent, but still, I mean, I wanted to sound natural like me. But if you don't know me, you may believe that it could be, me, but a weird one. But I mean, for me, it was really funny. I showed it to my friends, my better half, and I mean, it was, yeah, it's you, fine, but it's not you. So I had to temporarily put that aside for a moment, but eventually this technology will build up very fast, and you're not supposed to show in the video. And if you don't do that, it's much easier to create those content and to plan those content, because I have to admit, when I come up with an idea, okay, this is a chapter, I have to chop it down to videos, and I come up with 5 videos and then worksheets, some activities, whatever. And when I run it with AI, sometimes it comes up with something that I never thought about. And I'm not the best teacher in the world. I'm not the most experienced person on the curriculum. AI knows it all, right? And it can come up with some idea that you might never think of, even I'm 25 years of teaching experience and everything. I mean, that's totally normal, right? And in that sense, there is a lot to learn from AI. And if, teachers are open to it with a discussion, and, it's also, in that sense, a good idea to use AI as a reflection, as a brainstorming partner. You can just come up with, this happened today, and I don't want this to happen in my classrooms anymore, in our classes anymore. So what can I do? Then AI may come up with some ideas. You may try them, like a companion, like a mentor, because it knows everything. So, yeah, I mean, in that sense, we will definitely adopt to using AI, and those platforms will also help us. But we always say this from time to time on LinkedIn. Those edtech companies, they come up with an idea and say, okay, this is going to work well. This is going to transform education, this and that. But then you look at the product. It may work well, fine. But then you look at the company and you find out that, sometimes, most of the time, they don't have an educator to give them an idea. They didn't do a field research. They have never been to school, since years. So I think this must change. Educators must be more, involved in those developments. Yeah, we don't know too much of technology or coding, whatever, but we have the experience. So let us bring it to your company so that we can produce more quality stuff. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, fantastic. So partner, brainstorming, a mentor to the teacher, lifelong learning, AI as a teacher's ally. What do you think, Darren? Do you think that AI will replace teachers, or will they sideline teachers, or is there something entirely different going on?
Yeah, so I've got a fairly robust take on this. And I've got a bit of flack from it. So I look, broadly speaking, AI won't replace the teaching profession, because actually the teaching profession is built on relationships and trust. I mean, trust sits at the absolute center of good education. The teachers that we trust are the ones we learn from. It's basic Maslow, really. I mean, if you feel comfortable and confident in the environment, you're much more likely to learn. If you're worried about the teacher shouting at you or dismissing you or being sarcastic towards you or whatever, or just not being very good at what they do, then you're much less likely to learn. So we know that. It's just basic stuff, really. I mean, I certainly don't need to tell any educators that. But my take is this. The AI, teachers good AI bad thing is an absolute nonsense and a complete myth. The reason is that there are lots of good teachers, but there are lots of really not very good teachers. And there are lots of schools that don't allow good teachers to be good. You can be a really great teacher, but you can be in a school which is just you're just firefighting. And literally I've been there. I was a deputy head. I moved into a school as deputy head, and it was just chaos. I mean, it was, and I would consider myself historically as being a good teacher. It took me 2 years of absolute hell just to get to the point where I had my classes roughly where I wanted them. I mean, it was really, really tough. It was a really tough sort of inner city school that sat in the middle of a council housing estate. It was a tough place to, in one of the very deprived sort of parts of the UK. So it was actually really, really hard. And I felt myself constantly compromised as an educator because I just couldn't do my job properly because I was just firefighting all the time. And it was just really depressing. So I think the notion of AI, teachers, don't worry about it, teachers, you'll never have to worry. AI is not going to replace you. Absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. AI won't replace the teaching profession, but I hope that AI will replace some bad teachers because I actually think our kids deserve better. And I've worked all over the world. I've worked in dozens of countries. I've managed 30 or 40 schools, line manage the heads. I've been in hundreds of lessons. I mean, hundreds and hundreds as an inspector, as a line manager, as a head teacher, as a school improvement advisor. I mean, I've literally been in hundreds. I've seen some lessons I just thought, and I actually left the lesson angry, because there was no reason why the teacher acted and behaved in the way that they did towards those kids. And I felt really quite aggrieved by that. So I've had a genuinely a lot of experience. I'm not just kind of talking off the top of my head. This is stuff I've seen firsthand. So we know that there are great teachers. Okay, we know that. Okay, Haran, from the way you talk, I can just tell you say you're not a very good, I can tell you're a great teacher. It's just obvious the way in which you talk about your subject. But there are not many people like you in the world, to be quite frank. I've already seen AI tools. I'll give you one example, just one example. I mean, there are plenty, and we're going to see a lot more. So in the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to see a lot more of these tools being developed. Just something as simple as a tool like Google AI Studio, which you can show it your screen, so you can enable web real-time screen sharing. And I did a post a few weeks ago where I basically talked with AI through a question paper. It was kind, it was supportive, it was funny, cracked jokes. It listened. When I said, I'm really sorry, I still don't understand, no problem at all. Let's take it was like literally saying this, don't worry, let's take a step back. Let's just go through it one more time. You cannot tell me for one moment that an individual student interfacing on a moment-by-moment basis with that versus stuck in a classroom of 30 where they're completely ignored, where the teacher spends the whole lesson shouting, and then, as Haran says, they're given homework they don't understand. You can't for one moment tell me that suddenly teachers are good and AI is bad. It's an absolute myth. And I think we'll do ourselves a huge disservice as a teaching profession if we arrogantly hold on to this notion that we will never be replaced. I actually think we need to think that we will be replaced. Because I think if we do that, we might start taking things a bit more seriously. Not everyone, and I'm aware there are many brilliant teachers, by the way. And as I said, there are many great teachers in difficult circumstances, which is why they all leave. But I think we need to understand that the AI tools that we have now are super basic. I mean, they are super, super basic. I liken it to when we had the ZX Spectrum coming out and the Commodore 64 and the Atari, way back in the day, or the Macintosh One, way back in the mid-80s. We are there with AI right now. We're in the kind of mid-80s. And if you look at Moore's Law, completely blown out of the water, Moore's Law no longer exists. We're now getting 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times multiples every single year. Moore's Law talked about the processing speed doubling every 2 years and halving in price. That was blown out of the water in November 2022. We're now much more into Ray Kurzweil's law of accelerating returns. So we're now seeing AI improving on itself exponentially. That will continue to happen. And so as educators, we need to understand we're up against it. I mean, we're seriously up against it. So we have to reframe what we do. We have to reframe our relationship with technology, and we have to reframe our relationship with the students. Because if we don't, quite frankly, then we're on a hiding to nothing. Quite frankly, we're on a losing streak.
Hi, secondary school teachers. We're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculums. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
Did you know that every year, half of disadvantaged children who are top attainers at primary school don't go on to achieve top GCSE maths results? At Axiom Maths, we exist to change that. Our fully funded program helps schools nurture young mathematicians through weekly face-to-face maths circles, where pupils tackle challenging and exciting problems outside the national curriculum. With just under £3,000 annual funding, expert training and quality resources, we give schools everything they need to inspire the next generation of mathematical thinkers. Want to make a difference? Visit axiommaths.com today and join over 400 schools delivering math circles across the UK.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Yeah, fantastic. And I just want to sorry, Harun, but I just wanted to add there because it brings to mind a recent conversation where both Kai-Fu Lee and Stuart Russell were being asked similar questions, where Stuart Russell was very optimistic, especially around the American-based large language models, and Kai-Fu Lee said, look, they are expensive, they're not sustainable over time, and we are still what Darren would have called 1980s, but what he says is early experimental phase. Companies are still trying to figure out how to use these things, just like schools are trying to figure out how to use these things. And what we're really going to see in the next couple of years are much more improved use of applications that really can cater to student engagement, student needs, and the learning outcomes as well. And I think that having myself observed up close poor teaching, especially during the COVID pandemic, where I had the distinct displeasure of watching some of my own children's classes online. And I have a vivid memory of my son turning around saying, please, can I just leave this teacher talking for the next 45 minutes and I can go down to the lake and do some fishing? And I said, yes, you know what? Go fishing, because this is not something that anyone should have to listen to. And I do think that there are teachers who could be replaced by some of these new technologies that are coming. But I wonder if that means that it puts a pressure on teachers then to learn how to use AI, or is there room still for teachers who haven't or maybe haven't found no interest in learning the fundamental AI skills and are teaching perhaps a subject where they judge that AI is not needed or not useful in terms of supporting their subject? What do you think there, Harun? What are you experiencing on your end?
Well, first I have to say this, when Darren was talking about, teachers will be replaced, some of them. 7 or 8 years ago, I attended this Flipped Learning Summit, and John Bergman was there as a keynote speaker. And he said at some point, if flipped learning can replace teachers or a teacher, then it will, and it should. And now we can say the same thing. If AI can replace a teacher, if the teacher is that underperforming, then it should. And AI is definitely good at explaining stuff if the student listens. And in that sense, I think I remember my online learning coordinator times at my previous school. When the pandemic happened, we just switched the school online in 3 days on Moodle. Everyone worked. But then, as an online learning coordinator, we started, helping teachers, explain stuff, guide them about, how to run Moodle, Zoom sessions and stuff. But some of them, a few of them, they were not able to, check their emails properly, let alone using the platform. And Moodle is very complicated because it's open source. But AI, we don't have the same option with AI. You can't just say, I can't use AI properly, but I'm going to go to class and teach. I mean, within a few years' time, I don't think that's going to be an option. And that's why they're going to be sidelined. They will go to schools which the principals, the board is also against AI. Maybe they will survive there for a little bit more, but eventually we'll get there.
Yeah, I completely agree. I just think that any head teacher with any sense right now and any governing body right now needs to be leaning into this really hard. Because all the kids are using it. I mean, they're all using it. They're all learning how to do deepfakes on TikTok. I mean, this stuff's happening. It's not a drill. This is happening right now. So, and again, I mean, I think your point, Clara, about, what if it's teachers who don't want to use it to teach their lesson? Well, forget about the notion of just teaching the way in which we know it right now, because that has to change. The dry didactic, because you're right. The standard teacher doesn't need to. Maybe they can use it, Oak or Magic School or whatever, one of these sort of wrappers. I don't have anything for or against them. They're just tools. TeachMate, they're tools that can help people to plan and prepare their lessons. Maybe that's where your use of AI begins and ends, using it to plan lessons. But I can guarantee you your students will less and less wish to engage with that style of learning, because they're actually going to be able to access far more interesting and engaging modalities now, pretty much. But your point, actually, Clara, you mentioned about the application layer. That's critical. Right now, the application layer for education is terrible. Terrible. I mean, there isn't really a decent student-facing application. There just isn't. I mean, Magic School is literally the only one that under 13s can use. And they've done some clever stuff to make that happen. But ultimately, there are no real student-facing products, because everything's sort of 13 plus or 18 plus. So actually the application layer is where the value is going to be in education in the next few years. So I'm really looking forward to seeing, companies like Study Hall, Sophia Fenichel Study Hall. I did some work with them, but no affiliation now with Sophia whatsoever. I did a little bit of work with her last couple of years ago. But I think what she is doing around the application layer is really, really interesting. So I think we're going to see more and more, because there is when it comes to a simple wrapper on a large language model, there's no moat. I mean, there's literally no moat. A company will bring out a tool, which is quite good. Google will just completely destroy it and you'll have to pay for this tool. Google offer a free tool, which is better. So this tool just falls away. But I think the application layer is where we can bring our expertise in. And I think back to Harron's point, absolutely right. It's where we need educators to work at. I am now, if the work I do with National College, I work at the application layer, because we're building a suite of AI tools that will support teachers. I don't understand how the stuff works way in the background, but I'm able to prompt and create the wrapper, if you like, which allows the AI to behave in a certain way. So I think that's where we need to see more effort put in the next few years, so that students as well as teachers have safe, friendly, secure, data protected, monitored applications that they can actually learn from. And then I think we'll start to see an acceleration towards a lot more autonomy and a lot more autonomous student use of AI. And that's where, Harron, I think you'll start to see some really interesting flipped learning approaches, because rather than them necessarily having to watch a video, they go through a series of exercises with their AI tutor at home, and then they bring that learning into an interface with you as the human teacher and start doing project work and combining subjects together. I think there could be some really interesting stuff that happens in the next few years.
Actually, I have to think about it myself too. I didn't see this until Clara brought it up. I mean, applications, and you said that you're absolutely right. There are no proper applications for kids to use. And I mean, we send students home with basic stuff and they have to watch the videos, fine. But if they don't understand that video, they will rewatch the video. It's the same explanation. It's just static, right? There's nothing different as you explained, right? Let's take a step back, let's do this. There's nothing like that. It's just a static video.
What you could then start doing is thinking about this. You've got a video, you can take the transcript from that video and you can use it to basically train an AI bot. So you'd have a series of videos, and each one of those videos will have a little AI tutor that sits alongside that video that knows that video inside out. I think that's where we'll start to see some augmentation. And you can do it with Magic School now. I mean, you can literally do it with Magic School right now. You can take the transcript, upload it into Magic School, give it a simple instruction, and then you can release that bot that sits alongside the video. And then if they're stuck on anything in the video, they can ask the bot that knows the video inside out. So I think there are ways that you can start using some quite simple tools to augment your videos.
Right. Yeah, that's a great idea. Actually, I should dig this. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you for that. I think there's a lot of teachers out there that would greatly appreciate that piece of information as well, and will find it positive to hear that there are new ways of technology being used. I just want to take a moment real quick, just to once again thank our sponsor for the show. The show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt, educational publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. And level up your professional development today by visiting johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles and use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. So, Darren, I want to go back to linking this up with curriculum, because I think that all three of us do a lot of thinking about curriculum. I don't work anymore with curriculum day to day in the classroom, but I, like both of you, have had a lot of exposure to different forms of a curriculum, from the international baccalaureate to the Swedish curriculum, American curriculum, and Danish curriculum, and the British curriculum, and so on. Darren, you have described that traditional curriculum seems disconnected from real-world from real-world outcomes. That some of these tasks that students are being asked to do are a quote-unquote waste of time. So I have two questions for you. I'm going to kind of conflate them. First, in your view, what is fundamentally wrong with how we structure learning today? And two, given the slow pace of systemic reform, what can teachers do today in the classroom? Can they themselves provide any kind of meaningful change with the curriculum that they do have, and what that requires?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing that's wrong, fundamentally wrong with our curriculum today, is it's utterly divorced from the way that the world is. You know, we live in a very highly mediated, very multidisciplinary environment where everything feeds into everything else, where there's no such thing as a single individual discipline. I mean, literally everything is like this enormous kind of massive information that we need to decipher and we need to understand and learn from. And yet we do an hour of maths and an hour of English and an hour of history, and they're isolated to the point where there is not necessarily even sort of planning between departments. You know, I've seen it time and time again where you'll have teachers doing an English literature text, have no idea what's going on in history. And that just makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. You need to be talking to each other so you've got this sort of continuity between the subjects. So I think, so first of all, there's that. There's the fact that, you know, the subjects are completely divorced from reality. The challenge we've got, of course, is that, you know, I think Karen mentioned it earlier on, we're wagged by, you know, we're wagged by the university and college tail. So the school dog is wagged by the HE tail, and that everyone's obsessed with getting A levels and IB so that they get their UCAS points or their grade point average or whatever the equivalent is, so they get to university. But I think what we're going to see, and I think this is why we will start to see a huge disruption, is we'll see fewer and fewer students going to higher education. I mean, I really believe that it's not that they will stop, but I think we see a decrease in the number of students going on to higher education, because there will be legitimate alternative pathways which are vocational, where they're still going to get the qualifications, where they can still have this on, continuous development and continuous qualifications, where they might end up spending 5 years in an accountancy firm and still end up with a degree, but they've not got a $100,000, $200,000 student debt. So I just don't think that it is sustainable in the long term. And so therefore, if the HE sector, cartel, whatever you want to call it, is not sustainable in the long term, then that will trickle down to schools. So I think we're going to see some big disruptions in HE first in the next few years. We're already seeing it. Lots of universities in the UK are literally on their last legs. I think we're then going to see the trickle down. We're also seeing an enormous fall off in the birth rates. I mean, like critical fall off in birth rates across the world. So we're seeing fewer and fewer kids going into schools. That means fewer and fewer kids going to universities, which is going to have a negative impact in the next sort of 10 to 15 years. So I think we've got a lot of macro stuff going on, which actually is going to, so you've got AI, falling birth rates, globalization's now dead in the water. We're going to see isolationist policies. We're already seeing isolationist policies. These things matter because actually they're all going to have this kind of cumulative effect to completely rewrite, starting at HE, I believe, and then trickling down. So I think we're going to see some seismic shocks hitting our education system in the next 3 to 5 years, which is why I firmly believe we need to be on the front foot. And I think AI is not the answer, but it's definitely one way in which we can probably bring some more support into what we do. Second question, completely forgot what you said because I just got so carried away with that question.
Well, we're almost out of time. We only have just a couple of minutes left. So the second question was, and I'll let you answer that as your final question, and then I'll go back to Haran. The second question for you was: is there something that, given the slow pace of systemic reform, teachers
what can schools do?
In schools today or in their classroom today?
Yeah, really simple things. Okay, so I would suggest you do this. Get a working group together, AI working party, which is planning an event. So one example might be one Friday every month, we collapse the curriculum and kids can run with passion projects. Or what we did in Tunisia, 1 week at the end of term. Getting a working party together to do curriculum reform with AI means nothing. It's vague. It means meaningless. Getting a working party that plans something, it's very, very different. So I would say do that. Start small. Nick Jackson in Australia did a brilliant thing. I learned a huge amount from that guy. He does something called Genius Hour, 1 hour every week, randomly. They have Genius Hour. They drop everything and they run with passion projects using AI. Brilliant, brilliant idea. So I would suggest doing that. If you want to start making moves towards project-based learning, towards real world, kind of problems and solving the sustainable development goals, et cetera, just start small. One afternoon, one Friday afternoon, or 1 hour a week, randomly selected, whatever it is. But I think we need to start thinking about this for next academic year. Because if we don't, we'll just carry on doing what we've always done. That's enough from me.
Fantastic. Haran, the last question for you, and we just have a little less than a minute, but tell us, for the teachers listening tonight, many are feeling trapped between the mandates that they have and what the students actually need. What is your advice? What's the one thing that they can try tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, we don't ask teachers, we don't ask students on what they want to learn, how they want to teach, all about accountability, and teachers are really trapped in this. Revolt, that's what I'm going to say, because when I brought flipped learning to my school, I was lucky that my SLT was ignorant. So they let me do whatever I want to do, and they rarely popped in my classes. And whenever I got an observation, they were really happy, but then nothing else. So just push the boundaries. That's what I'm going to say. We have to revolt.
Fantastic. Push the boundaries. That's the perfect way to end. Darren Hartung, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you to all our listeners around the world. Thank you to our sponsors. And we have much more to talk about, but that's all the time we have for tonight. So thank you both and have a good evening.
You too. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks, Clara. Thanks, Harun.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.